I never intended to work for wolves. At least that's what I told myself the night I crossed the border into Black Ridge territory. With a single suitcase and a recommendation letter that smelled faintly of regret. The air there always tasted like pine and rain, as if the mountains themselves were warning you to turn back before it was too late. But I didn't turn back. When you've lost everything, the unknown is strangely comforting. The Rosewile Theater stood at the edge of the forest, built from dark stone and old magic. A place that once hosted human performers, artists, illusionists, before the Pax claimed it. Now it was a sanctuary, a throne, a stage for creatures who pretended to blend in with the world, but never truly did. I was hired as the magician's assistant, a title far more ordinary than the truth it carried, because the magician I was assigned to was not human. His name was Elias, and they called him the Alpha's brother. Everyone spoke the Alpha's title with reverence, but Elias? They whispered his, as though saying it too loudly would draw his attention, as though he was the more dangerous one. On my first night, I found him alone on the dim stage, standing beneath the spotlight like he had been waiting for me. He didn't move when I entered, didn't speak, just looked at me with eyes that were far too calm, like a quiet storm that had already chosen its path of destruction. "You're late," he finally said. His voice was low, smooth in a way that felt practiced, beautiful, controlled. "I missed the evening carriage, I replied, steadying the tremor in my tone. "The road was fogged." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You hesitated." He could smell fear, or guilt, or maybe both. I swallowed. "Does it matter?" "I'm here now." His lips tilted, somewhere between amusement and warning. "For your sake," he murmured. "I hope that remains true." I didn't know what he meant then. Later, I would. My room in the theater was small but warm. I unpacked in silence, trying not to think about the life I had left behind, about the debts, the promises, the betrayal that burned like a fresh bruise in my chest. I came here for anonymity, for a new beginning, for a place where no one knew my name or my mistakes. But the theater had its own ghosts. Whispers in the walls, shadows that moved where no one walked, doors that locked themselves when you weren't looking. No one told me the building was alive. I simply learned to accept that some things didn't need explanations. The rehearsal began at dawn. Elias moved like darkness made flesh, fluid and deliberate. He didn't speak unless necessary. And when he performed, the air around him thickened, humming with something ancient I couldn't name. He didn't use cards or scarves or smoke. His magic was not illusion, it was real. He could bend the world with a gesture. Call the wind, command silence, make shadows obey. And I was expected to assist him, not with props, but with focus, with grounding, with presence. He once told me magic was not about power, it was about control. But the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands clenched whenever his abilities surged, I realized control was exactly what he lacked, and I was meant to anchor him, but no one explained how. One evening, after hours of rehearsal, I found him alone again. This time backstage, seated in front of the cracked mirror lit by flickering bulbs. His reflection stared back at him like a stranger he couldn't understand. "You shouldn't wander alone at night," he said without looking up. "I wasn't wandering," I said, leaning against the doorway. "I was looking for you." His eyes lifted to mine. There it was again. Something unspoken. A tether. A question neither of us dared to voice. "You're afraid of me," he said simply. I didn't answer. He stood, closing the space between us with measured steps, as though testing whether I'd flinch. I didn't, which surprised both of us. His breath brushed my cheek. "You should be." His closeness was not violent, not cruel, just intense. Like standing near a fire that hadn't decided whether to warm you or consume you. "What are you?" I asked quietly. His gaze darkened, not like anger, but like memory. Something I didn't choose, he said. The room seemed to exhale around us. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed through the hall, and someone else entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, a presence like iron and winter wind. The Alpha, Elias's older brother. Where Elias was quiet storm, the Alpha was thunder. Loud simply by existing. His gaze flicked between us, unreadable. You're needed, he told Elias. Elias didn't move. Didn't break eye contact with me. The Alpha's tone hardened. Now. Only then did Elias step back. But before leaving, his hand brushed mine. Barely a touch. A warning. A claim. A truth I wasn't ready to understand. When he was gone, the Alpha looked at me, studying. He's not like the rest of us, he said. If you stay, he will mark you. Whether he means to or not, my heartbeat stuttered. Is that a threat? I whispered. No, the Alpha replied. It is fate. I should have left then. I should have run. But something about Elias called to me. Not the power, not the danger, the loneliness, because I recognized it, and I realized with a kind of quiet terror that I wasn't there to escape my past. I was there to rewrite it. With him. Even if it destroyed us both. I didn't sleep much after that night, not because of fear, though perhaps I should have been afraid, but because I couldn't stop replaying the moment Elias touched my hand. Such a small thing, barely there, yet it felt like a spark had been struck deep beneath the ribs. Not lightning. No, something quieter and more dangerous, like the first ember of a fire that could burn an entire forest to ash. The theater woke early, not with music or chatter, but with breathing. The building had a pulse, a rhythm, as if its walls remembered every secret ever whispered inside them. And in those early hours, when the halls were quiet and the world was still half asleep, it was impossible not to feel watched. Not by people, by the pack. They didn't trust me, I was human. At least as far as they knew. Humans in Black Ridge territory came with motives. Trade, treaties, debts, alliances, deals made in shadows. But I hadn't come for any of that. I came to disappear. And that made me unpredictable, which made me dangerous. Or so they believed. The first encounter happened 2 days later. I was practicing one of the stage sequences alone, one where I had to stand behind Elias and link my breathing with his, anchoring his power so the shadows didn't spiral out of control. He had shown me the steps only once, yet my body remembered them, not my mind. I was halfway through the motions when I felt a presence behind me, not Elias. Your posture is wrong, a woman said. I turned to find her leaning against the curtain, arms crossed. She was tall, elegant, with dark hair pulled into a braid that reached her spine. Her eyes were sharp, not unkind, but assessing in a way that made me feel dissected. I'm Liza, she said, beta of this pack. The second in command. My pulse tightened. I didn't realize I was being watched, I said. Her mouth curved slightly, not a smile. More like acknowledgement of a truth she expected me to already know. You're always watched here. Especially you, I didn't ask why. The answer hung between us like thick smoke. Because Elias had touched me. Because the Alpha had noticed. Because fate was a word that wolves didn't use lightly. Liza stepped closer. Not threatening, just deliberate. You should understand something, she said. Elias is powerful. And power draws gravity. What attaches to him rarely escapes. The phrasing struck something inside me. I'm not here to attach myself to him, I said quietly. You already have, she replied. Even if you don't feel it yet. Her gaze softened then, not into kindness, but into warning. Do not confuse loneliness with destiny. His or yours. She left before I could respond, but her words stayed. That night, rehearsal took on a different tone. Elias seemed less controlled, less careful. as if something inside him was shifting. His movements were sharper. The shadows he commanded flickered like flame in a wind that only he could feel. At one point, his focus slipped, and the stage lights shattered above us, raining glass like cold, glittering rain. I did not move. He grabbed my wrist, steadying me more than protecting me. For a moment, our breaths were the same air. His eyes were no longer calm storm, they were hurricane. "You're anchoring too tightly," he said. "No," I whispered. "You're losing balance." His grip tightened. Not painful, just real. "You don't understand what happens when I lose control." I met his gaze without looking away. "Then show me." The silence that followed was not empty, it was full. Electric. Alive. He stepped back only when someone else entered the room. A younger pack member who bowed his head respectfully, but looked at me with thinly veiled suspicion. "The Alpha requests your presence," he told Elias. Elias didn't acknowledge the message immediately. His eyes remained on me. Searching. Questioning. Inviting. Finally, he released my wrist and turned away. But this time, I followed him. The Alpha's chamber was at the highest level of the theater, behind heavy oak doors engraved with ancient runes. The room inside was dim, lit only by firelight. The Alpha stood beside the window, overlooking the forest. Elias stopped several feet away from him, but I remained at Elias's side. The Alpha noticed. That was when I realized he saw everything. His gaze moved to me first, not hostile, not welcoming, just aware. "You have been seen with him," the Alpha said. "3 times now. Should that matter?" I asked. "Yes," he answered simply. "Because it is how bonds begin." Elias's jaw locked. "This is not what you think," he said to his brother. The Alpha turned to him, voice calm but still edged. "You cannot choose not to bond. The instinct chooses for you." My chest tightened. Bond. I had heard the word whispered in the halls. Tales of wolves who became tied, soul to soul, without ceremony, without permission, without escape. It was not romantic. It was not gentle. It was destiny sharpened into blade. "I haven't chosen anything," I said, though the words tasted unsteady. The Alpha stepped closer, not to threaten, but to make sure I understood. "Elias is unlike the rest of us," he said, "not because he is weaker, but because he is stronger. His power is not only magic, it is hunger. And when he bonds, he binds completely." My breath caught. Elias didn't deny it. The Alpha continued. "If you stay, your fate will no longer be your own. You will become part of him. And he, part of you." He turned his gaze to Elias again. "And we both know what happens when something threatens your control." The room thickened. Elias's hands clenched at his sides. "There is no threat," he said, and there was something in his voice I hadn't heard before. A plea, a fracture, a truth. The Alpha shook his head slowly. "There always is." We left the chamber in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because neither of us knew how to speak what had changed. Halfway down the staircase, Elias stopped. The firelight from the corridor caught the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. He didn't face me when he spoke. "You should leave." The words hit harder than they should have. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. "You should be," he answered. His voice was raw, not cold, not distant. Raw. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered. I stepped toward him, not brave, just honest. "And I don't want to run." That was when he finally turned to me. His eyes were not storm. They were grief. "You don't understand what I am," he said. "No," I answered. "Not yet." He exhaled shakily. His hand lifted, hesitant, almost touching my face, but he stopped just before contact. "As long as you stay," he said, voice breaking in the quiet, "I will lose my control. Every day." A little more. I swallowed hard. Then teach me how to hold you together. His breath caught. Something in him cracked. Not open, not exposed, just noticed, and that was more intimate than touch. But instead of responding, he turned and walked away. This time, I didn't follow. Not because I doubted, but because I finally understood. This wasn't a love story, it was a collision. And fate wasn't asking for permission, it was already happening. The days that followed felt suspended, like the world was breathing in, but never exhaling. Elias avoided me. Not entirely, he still appeared at rehearsals, still guided my stance, still corrected my breathing with the same quiet precision. But the space between us was different. Heavy, charged, full of something unsaid and dangerously close to becoming something irreversible. The pack noticed. Whispers followed me through the halls. Not cruel but cautious, almost afraid. That was when I started noticing the dreams. Every night I opened my eyes inside a dark forest. Moonlight filtered through the branches like silver veins, and a presence moved behind me. Not seen, only felt. Warm breath at my neck. A hand that never touched. A voice that never spoke. But I knew who it belonged to. Elias. Except in the dream, he wasn't holding back. One evening, as storm clouds gathered over Black Ridge, Lisa approached me again. This time without the formality, without the posture of a beta. Just a woman who had seen too many endings. "You need to understand what the bond is," she said. We were alone in the upper corridor, the one that overlooked the stage where Elias was rehearsing alone. His silhouette moved like shadow and flame. "The bond isn't just connection," she continued. "It's recognition. Wolves don't choose who they belong to. They discover it. Like gravity, I folded my arms, trying to steady the heat building behind my ribs whenever I looked at him. "And if one rejects it?" I asked. Liza went still. "Then both break." She said it softly, as though she was recalling the memory of a wound she still carried. "A wolf can survive without love," she whispered, "but not without the bond." My throat tightened. "And humans?" She looked at me then, really looked. "You will feel everything he feels. His hunger, his fear, his power, his nightmares, his loneliness. If one of you fractures, the other bleeds." A silence settled between us. Not empty, heavy, unavoidable. "You're already linked," she said. "You felt it the moment you touched." I didn't deny it, couldn't, because the truth was already tangled in my pulse. That night, the storm broke. Wind howled through the old theater windows. Lightning cracked the sky open. The rehearsals had ended hours ago. But I couldn't sleep, not with the dream still lingering at the edge of my mind. So I went to find him. Not because I was reckless, because I knew he was awake too. I found him on the main stage, sitting at the edge, staring out into the empty seats, as though expecting an audience made of ghosts. I climbed up beside him slowly. He didn't turn, but I felt his awareness shift the moment I sat down. For a while we said nothing. The silence was not distance. It was recognition. "Why did you become a magician?" I asked finally. He exhaled a laugh, but it wasn't humor. "I didn't choose it," he said. "Magic is inherited here. Passed through blood. My brother was meant to receive it. But the gift came to me, and the pack resented you for it?" I asked. "No," he answered. "They feared me for it." Lightning flashed across the stage, illuminating the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the quiet war in his eyes. "What exactly are you afraid of losing control over?" The question felt naive even as I asked it. His voice, when it came, was barely more than breath. "Myself." Something in my chest pulled tight. He turned to look at me then, really look. The kind of gaze that stripped every wall, every lie, every pretense. "When I am close to you," he said, voice raw, "everything inside me quiets. The power, the hunger, the noise," he swallowed, jaw tightening. "That should terrify me." But it doesn't. It feels like relief. I felt it. Not in my mind, in my bones. And yet, I whispered. You keep pulling away. Because if I let myself have you, he said, voice breaking, I won't know how to stop. The storm outside roared. Inside, everything was still. I placed my hand over his. A choice, a declaration, a surrender. He sucked in a breath, sharp, stunned, helpless. The shadows around us stirred like wind catching flame. But something else stirred too. Not darkness. Recognition. The bond. A thread of silver heat spiraled between us. Felt, not seen. A connection not forged by touch but by understanding. He closed his eyes, not to shut me out, but because the moment was too much to look at directly. His fingers tightened around mine, not claiming, not taking, holding. The kind of touch that said, I have been waiting my entire life to belong somewhere. I leaned forward, not with hunger, but with truth, and he allowed it. Our foreheads rested together. Two storms meeting, two wounds recognizing each other, two lives that had been running in circles and finally collided in the middle. Breathing the same air, choosing the same gravity. Outside, the thunder cracked. Inside, something changed, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly and permanently. A shift in the universe. A promise made without words. But the world does not allow peace for long. Not for wolves. Not for those bound to them. Not for those who were never meant to stay. Because the door to the hall slammed open. And the alpha stood there. Not calm. Not composed. His eyes were full of warning. They're coming, he said. Elias straightened instantly. Who? The alpha looked at me. Not at Elias. At me. Her past. My blood froze. Because I had never told them my past. Not a name, not a place, not a crime, not the truth I had run from. Yet somehow, it had found me. Elias stepped forward, placing himself between me and the world. Not thinking, not choosing. Instinct. The bond had already formed, and the next choice would decide whether it became salvation or destruction.